Hello friends, welcome to the Movieology channel. Today I will tell you about a unique type of horror film, Daddy Head. The movie begins with Isaac and his stepmother, Laura. Isaac was not close to Laura, but his father, James, meant everything to him. One day, an incident completely changes Isaac and Laura's lives. They learn that Isaac's father, James, has died in a horrific accident. It hadn't been long since Isaac's biological mother passed away, and this new tragedy impacted him even more. Laura, too, was devastated by James's death. She began drinking heavily and spent her time watching old videos of James to remember him. Following James's death, all his property and insurance money were left to Laura. In his will, James had expressed his desire to be buried near the grave of his first wife, Suzanne, which was in their garden. During this time, a lawyer introduces Laura to a woman named Mary, who works with social services. Mary was tasked with deciding Isaac's future. She tells Laura she could keep Isaac with her or send him to a nurturing home. Since Isaac was still young, Laura asked for some time to decide. At night, Laura speaks to her mother over the phone. Her mother advises her to leave Isaac behind and start a new life, as he has already endured too much. However, Laura is unwilling to abandon him. At the very least, she didn't exhibit the typical behavior of a stepmother, and it also becomes clear that Laura wasn't a greedy woman. The next day, one of James's friends, Robert, visits to check on them. Robert, a divorced man, had 2 daughters living with him. After a brief conversation, Robert leaves. Isaac spent most of his time playing video games following James's death. During this period, Laura tries to talk to him, and we learn that Isaac has not yet come to terms with his father's death. Laura attempts to explain to him that James is no longer in this world. Afterward, she tears as she struggles to accept this reality entirely. That night, both Laura and Isaac fall asleep. Suddenly, a bright light shines from outside. The following day, when they wake up, Laura steps outside and sees clouds of smoke rising from the forest. Panicking, she rushes back inside and calls Isaac. Believing that a fire had broken out in the forest, she calls emergency services. However, when the fire team arrived, they found no signs of anything burning in the forest. That night, Laura wakes up to find blue lights glowing inside the house. She steps outside and sees the forest filled with these blue lights. She also sees her husband, James's wrecked car from the accident there. Suddenly, James appears before her in a zombie-like form. However, this was a nightmare that Laura had been having for several days. The next day, James's funeral takes place. Later that night, Isaac is in his room, while Laura, drunk, plays loud music and dances. Exhausted, she collapses on the floor and falls asleep. The loud music alerts their dog, Bella, who barks persistently at something. Isaac tries to wake his stepmother, but she doesn't respond. Bella keeps barking at something under the table, refusing to stop. Suddenly, Laura wakes up and sees something under the table. That thing abruptly emerges from under the table and smashes through the window, fleeing outside. Bella runs after it, barking incessantly. Laura becomes terrified and assumes it's a dangerous animal. She grabs a knife and follows Bella outside, but the creature has escaped her through the broken window. Bella continues barking persistently. Laura brings Bella back inside and fixes the window. Later, she goes to her room to change clothes. Meanwhile, Isaac comes in and says he is scared. Laura allows him to sleep with her. A knife is kept in the room, which Laura places in the drawer for safety. At night, Isaac dreams of seeing a strange creature. The following day, Robert visits again, and Laura tells him everything. Robert reassures her that it is probably just an animal, but Laura insists that she has never seen such a creature. Robert decides to stay at the house and prepare food for them to ensure nighttime safety. Meanwhile, Laura goes to her room to retrieve the knife, but it's missing. She searched everywhere but could not find it. She stops searching after Robert arrives. At night, Robert prepares dinner, but Isaac refuses to eat as he is still deeply traumatized. Laura tries to convince him to eat, warning that he might get sick, but Isaac says he isn't hungry. That night, Isaac hears some noises while sleeping in his room. Waking up, he sees a strange creature, the one he often saw in his dreams, but this time, it isn't a dream. It's real. The creature calls out to Isaac, speaking in his father's voice, and invites him to come into the forest before vanishing suddenly. The following day, Isaac is seen looking toward the forest. After some time, he leaves the house and heads into the forest. He sees his father there and tells him he knew he would return because he always trusted him. But the strange reality was that this wasn't his father. It was something else entirely. Meanwhile, Bella spots the creature and runs toward it, barking fiercely. Isaac tries to stop Bella. Seeing this, Laura arrives and tries to restrain Bella, but she cannot see anything. Isaac screams that his father is right there and that he has returned. Laura assumes that Isaac is deeply affected by the trauma. Laura calms Isaac and calls a psychologist. The psychologist asks Isaac questions about what he saw. Isaac explains that he saw his father, who looked very different, and was calling him into the forest. The psychologist suggests Isaac draw a picture of what he saw since he is good at drawing. Isaac quickly sketches an image, but it turns out to be horrifying. It depicts a strange creature, a mix of his father and some unknown being. Seeing this, Laura becomes anxious, because she also feels she has seen this creature before. The psychologist tells Laura that Isaac has a vivid imagination and is also an artist. He is still a child and hasn't been able to cope with the trauma of his father's death. He feels lonely and needs love. The next day, Isaac is once again staring at the forest. Laura approaches him and says that if he genuinely believes his father is in the forest, they will go and check the next day. Laura takes him into the forest to reassure Isaac and their dog, Bella. In the forest, Isaac finds a wooden shelter. Bella runs to the shelter and begins barking, but Laura finds the place unsettling. Isaac approaches the shelter and insists that his father built it. Laura tells him to move away, but he refuses to listen. When Laura tries to force him to leave, Isaac becomes angry and punches his stepmother. Despite this, Laura manages to get him away from the shelter. That night, Laura calls Robert and explains the entire situation. Laura believes that Isaac has become mentally unstable because he attacked her. She says that if this behavior continues, Isaac could cause serious harm when he grows up. Laura asks Robert to take Isaac away. Robert reassures her and says he will take him. During their conversation, Laura asks Robert why he got divorced. Robert admits that he cheated on his wife, which angers Laura, and she storms off. Later that night, Isaac sleeps in his room while Laura monitors him through a camera. Suddenly, the same shelter they saw in the forest appears outside on a wall of the house. That same night, Robert opens the door and Bella runs outside toward the forest. Robert follows her to find her, but Bella stops near the shelter and starts barking. A strange creature is present inside the shelter, which transforms into Bella's form. This creature was no ordinary animal, but seemed to be an extraterrestrial being or alien. The blue light incidents seen around the forest and the house now seem to have been caused by this creature. The creature grabs Bella. The next day, Laura and Robert search for Bella and find her injured in the forest. They take her to the vet, who informs them that Bella has died. Further examination reveals that Bella wasn't attacked by an animal, but had knife wounds on her body. Hearing this, Laura suspects that Isaac might be responsible, as the missing knife was still unaccounted for. To bury Bella, Laura and Robert take her to their private garden, where James and his first wife Suzanne's graves are located. However, they found the garden disturbed, and James's grave was damaged. After returning home, Laura tries to calm herself by adding some alcohol to her drink while keeping an eye on Isaac. That night, Isaac hears noises coming from the vent. When he opens the vent, he sees Bella, even though everyone knows she is dead. Isaac also sees his father inside the vent, but it turns out it isn't his father. It's the same creature capable of shape-shifting. The beast tells Isaac not to trust anyone, especially Laura and Robert, as they lie to him. Isaac asks the creature to come out, but the creature says it is being watched, referring to Laura monitoring him through the camera. Hearing this, Isaac starts crying, and Laura, noticing his distress, begins watching him more closely. She observes Isaac looking into the vent and talking to someone, and then she catches a glimpse of the creature, which terrifies her. Laura immediately informs Robert, and the two rush to Isaac's room to calm him down. Isaac insists that his father and Bella are there with him, even though the creature has disappeared. The two call the psychologist again. The psychologist explains to Isaac that he needs to confront the trauma he is experiencing, but Laura becomes frustrated and insists that she saw something strange in the vent. She declares that something is wrong with the house and cannot continue living there. The therapist tells Laura that both she and Isaac are dealing with the same issue, and Isaac is in a state of trauma. However, Laura breaks down, crying, and says no one understands her. Her dog is dead, James is gone, and her son doesn't listen to her. She admits she cannot take it anymore. Robert comes over to console her, and they talk, but Isaac watches this and then runs into the forest. Isaac calls out to the creature near the shelter and says it is correct because Laura and Robert lied to him. He declares he will reveal to them that his father is alive. The next day, Isaac refuses to eat, and Laura tells Robert she can't handle it anymore. She's overwhelmed, needs peace, and wants Robert to take Isaac away. Robert takes Isaac with him, but Isaac leads him to the shelter and insists his father built it. Robert tries to explain that his father is no longer alive, but Isaac refuses to believe him and becomes angry. Robert then hears strange noises from the shelter, and when he shines a flashlight, he sees the creature. Terrified, Robert tries to take Isaac away, but Isaac refuses to leave. Suddenly, Robert's screams are heard. It becomes clear that the creature isn't harming Isaac, but seems to have bigger plans involving him. The creature appears to Isaac in the form of Bella and his father. If it had wanted to kill Isaac, it could have done so earlier, just as it did with Bella. The next day, Laura arrives at the hospital, where Robert is admitted in critical condition. The situation has now escalated into a criminal case, so Laura cannot see Robert. Back home, Laura questions Isaac about whether he harmed Robert, but Isaac denies it. Laura then asks about the missing knife from her drawer, but Isaac denies taking it. She also asks if he damaged his father's grave, to which Isaac admits he did out of anger. However, Laura suspects he isn't telling the whole truth, and it's clear that the creature is behind everything, not Isaac. Isaac accuses Laura of lying to him and mentions seeing her kiss Robert the previous night. Shocked, Laura apologizes and tells Isaac she will leave everything behind and go away the next day. She promises to arrange caretakers for him, and all the property will be his. But Isaac seems indifferent, as if none of it matters to him. The therapist had already pointed out that Isaac didn't need material things. He needed love. That night, while Isaac is asleep, the creature returns to him. Meanwhile, Laura suddenly wakes up and checks on Isaac in his room. There, she sees the creature, which attacks her. Laura quickly shuts the door, causing the creature to slam into it. At this moment, Isaac realizes the beast is not his father, but a dangerous being. He begins to scream. Laura opens the door and finds Isaac injured. She immediately hugs him. Isaac picks up a knife and points it at the creature. As the creature moves forward, Laura takes the knife and kills it. It becomes evident that the creature was an alien life form, capable of shape-shifting and attacking its victims. Laura successfully eliminates the threat. The story then fast-forwards a few years, showing Isaac as an older child. He stares at the vent where the creature used to communicate with him. Later, he goes to the shelter in the forest and enters it. Inside, he finds a picture of himself with his father, James, and a skeleton, likely that of the creature. It becomes clear that the creature had assumed James's form by looking at the picture. Isaac always claimed that his father built the shelter, which might have been a secret hideout for the two. The presence of the picture confirms that the shelter held special meaning for them. It's unlikely the creature stole the picture to place it there. Instead, it seems the creature used the image to mimic James and lure Isaac. The story continues, and we see Isaac in a new home, where Laura is also present. This time, Isaac calls Laura Mum for the first time. It signifies that Isaac has overcome his emotional struggles and accepted his stepmother's love. With this, the film comes to an end. If you enjoyed this detailed explanation, please like the video, and if you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe.